One more time, it is late 1944. One more time, there is snow, there are trees, and there are Germans coming. The Deadly Wood, The Battle of the Bulge, a game about one of the most gamed topics in all of wargaming, as many of the games, if not all of them on the topic. This is a two-player game that also can be played solitaire by a single player, controlling both factions at the best of their possibility, which is how I personally played it. Germans versus Allies, a lot of them American at the beginning, and then some reinforcement will arrive. Hopefully, but it may be too late by then. Again, it's a very well-known topic for wargaming. The designer also has a section, the designer's notes, explaining why yet another game about the Bulge. And the general idea is he wanted to have a one-mapper, check, that was playable, simple, could be played in an evening, still gave you a general sense of the entire event. And, you know, it's not like there are no games that fit that bill, but, well, this is one of those games that fits that bill. And I also would say that it succeeds in doing so. It's a pretty successful representation of the general event, of the overall event, in a way that is playable even by beginner wargamers, and that does not have a lot of rules overhead or things like that. Matter of fact, players of games such as the Dark Valley or other games with the dark keyword in the title by the same designer, Ted Racer, they will look like, this looks kind of familiar. Again, the designer's notes explain that this game is indeed based on the same dark, on the dark system. It's just that GMT asked to keep the dark keyword for games published by them. This one is published by Revolution. So Deadly is Revolution's version of Dark, for those that have followed the GMT games with the dark keyword in the title by the same designer. So here we have the map, and if you know history and if you know wargaming, you know what's gonna happen next and in the first couple of turns. The Germans are coming from this direction here. There's gonna be a number of American defenders that are gonna be taken aback. They're gonna be bashed pretty badly, and the Bulge will form, hence the name, and the Germans will need to try to advance as much as possible to take control of key locations on the board. Those locations with the red hex sides there, they represent victory locations, and they need to take control of as many of those as possible, as fast as possible, because unless they win an early victory, reinforcements will arrive from all directions. And at that point, the German advance will come to a halt, and possibly an allied pushback, counterattack will occur. Interesting enough, the Germans really have a massive military advantage, or at least a massive advantage in combat capability early on. They just can inflict a lot of damage if they can find the allies, and if they can find their way on this really punishing network of roads. Like in other games about the Battle of the Bulge, terrain is king, and the ally player really has to exploit the bottlenecks, to blow up bridges, to exploit force that is going to slow down the advance of the enemies, to prevent them from surrounding their forces and for concentrating too much. And so it's about trading blood for position, really figuring out how much to give up and where to set up the next defense, to fall back in installments so that the Germans don't destroy all of your forces here and then they rush through the map. The Germans have, again, this massive advantage when it comes to combat power early on, but they also have a pretty large front to cover, and since the reinforcements for the allied player will come from all directions, from here, but also from up there and down here, of course, as the German player, you also have to protect your flanks, or you're gonna be surrounded, the allies are gonna cut your supplies. For military units, military pieces represented by these counters here, fairly standard in terms of production design. If you play war games, you know what we're talking about here. Some military pieces have two main values. The first is combat, the second is movement. Some have three, and that is the case where you have attack and defense and that movement. So two values. The combat is split into different values for units that are better in defense than attack, or vice versa. Units have multiple steps. When they take a hit, they lose a step. Some units have 3 steps, which means the unit is represented by 2 counters. Never ideal, never my favorite way of handling things, but again, not too bad either. The game is a chit pull game, meaning you don't just get to activate all of your units, then the opponent activates all of theirs, and so on and so forth. Rather, players are gonna... Oh, what is this? I don't know what that meant. But this little baggie comes from some other game. Or whatever. But basically, you're gonna have activation chits that are gonna be placed in a cup, and when they're drawn, they'll tell you who gets to activate and to do what. If, for example, the unit gets only to move, or the units get only to move, or only to attack, or everybody can move and then attack. Everybody can move and then somebody can attack. Units don't move and they attack only, this sort of thing. And there's a lot going on here because the schedule of which combat chits, which activation chits go in the cup and which ones stay out changes from turn to turn. So that to me is a very elegant way of programming a lot of the schedule, a lot of the logistics into something this simple. You don't have to remember, okay, in turn 2 you can activate these people with that penalty, only that part. No, simply you look at the schedule. Okay, in turn 3, these 3 chits are placed in there, and these 4 chits go in there. And then when you draw them, the programming takes place. The different, the ebbs and flows of the battle, who gets an advantage, who is slowed down, that just happens. And that's a very elegant way for me to represent all of those imponderable factors without having a ton of rules. Reinforcements, for example, when reinforcements arrive, is dictated by drawing those chits. Also interesting, for each turn, you have usually you have two waves of reinforcement. So when the first chit is played or drawn, then you bring these ones, the first wave of reinforcements, then the second. And again, that's a little bit, that does have some tension and predictability because maybe you get to activate your units on the map before you can bring all of your reinforcements, or you bring them in and then you activate, which is usually preferable. A lot of stuff going on there. So when units activate, they will simply move, and then, if possible, if allowed by the rules, they can attack. Combat is resolved in a very classic way. Simply, you put together all of the attack factors of the attacking forces that are attacking adjacent enemies versus the total defensive force of the units in the hex that is being attacked. You turn the attacker-defender force into odds, 1-to-1, 2-to-1, and so on and so forth. Roll a die, and then simply apply the result as indicated here. And then, of course, we have the terrain effect table with modifiers that will modify movement and may also create shifts here. And there are assets that players may receive that may allow them to change that artillery, that sort of stuff. And here, very valuable, very valuable, the action sheet summary. Honestly, I almost feel like if you have played war games before, you know the general ideas, the general concept, just set up the game and start drawing chits, and then you will, instead of studying this beforehand, you familiarize yourself with this as you go. You'll probably miss some of the rules and some of the exceptions, because I would say this game, the core engine is so incredibly linear, it's so incredibly simple. Draw a chit, looking at this player, it's see who activates and gets to do what, resolve those actions, combat is combat odds, and and then you repeat. But there is a number of exceptions or specific things you can do this, but those units in that situation, they cannot do that. Those units get extra movement when they come in, and only that turn, and so on and so forth. So a lot of the historical flavor in Chrome has been hardwired into the action cheat system, into the schedule reinforcement, but there's still a number of minute rules that they may escape you the first time that you play, and maybe that's okay. Maybe that's okay. You'll fall in love with the game, and the second time that you play, there will be more stuff going on. So this is in essence the Deadly Woods, how the game works in general. Very simple action cheat pool game with combat odds at the heart of combat resolution. Do we really need another war game about the Battle of the Bulge? But do we need another war game? Do we need any games? It's not about need, it's about what we enjoy playing. And personally, my question is not like, do I need this in my collection? No, probably don't need any new game. But I still enjoy playing new games a lot. And so I don't see any reason not to play a new game about the Bulge. My question is not, do we need this one, but is it gonna be fun? Because the Bulge, to me, it's almost surprising that it is such a war game topic, because because of the historical events, it has a very specific script that is bound to present itself in every game about this topic, and which just does not make it for the best two-player games. The idea is that if you're playing a game about the Bulge, being the allies is gonna suck a little bit as a player from the point of view of gameplay. Turns 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on the granularity of the turn track, because you're gonna get smashed a lot and pummeled a lot, which is okay. But worse than that, you're not going to have much to do. I'm almost thinking, games about Barbarossa, the early phases as the Soviet play, you get pummeled a lot, but you also have a lot of units and you're still repositioning, scrambling around. In auto games about the Bulge, sometimes in turn 2 as the ally, you have almost no units whatsoever. And then the reinforcements will give you options as you're scrambling in, and then I can choose the entry and which road I'm gonna move through, and most important, which roads I'm gonna try to clog for the opponent. So I don't have particular problem with that because I played most of my war games solitaire, including this one. So to me, it's a fun puzzle because I'm both the Germans and the Allies. I don't think I ever played a game about the Bulge as a two-player game. Yeah, I don't know if I ever played it against a human opponent. I know that if I did, I would not want to be the Allies. So, good for you if you're those heroes that play the Allies in games about the Bulge. And the script will faithfully present itself here as you will want it to do if you're playing a game about this topic. You're going to have the German initial push, big slaughter for the Allies, and the Allies then are scrambling to bring in the reinforcements and to slow down the advance of the Germans as they then, to prevent sudden death victory, to then be able to bring in even more reinforcements. I would say for the Allies, it seems to me here the more pieces survive the initial onslaught than in other games about the Bulge, in which the board is almost entirely clear. And so they're able to put up some good defenses, and they're able to put together some good stacks, and if you support some defensive combats with artillery, there are some here stand some lines in the sand or some lines running in the snow that are a little stronger than in other games with the same topic, but again, that doesn't result in more mobility or more agency, because if you had those good defensive stacks and you put them in a nice forest behind a river, then that's just the best thing you can do, so you're not going to move them until they have to. So again, it seems to me that in terms of agency, the two sides are still vastly unbalanced, but again, that doesn't seem to be a problem for many of you because we keep buying games about this. I guess many of you are playing these games like I do as a solitaire gamer. In terms of gameplay, I love the dark blank system, and I really like, therefore, the deadly blank system. I hope there will be more dark stuff for GMT, more deadly stuff for Revolution, because it's a system that I like very much. I've been making video reviews for more than 10 years now, and I consistently tell you I love action cheat games. I love cheat pool games because of the variety, because the unpredictability. I'm sorry if this has become repetitive by now, but I like the system. I'm not gonna say anything different just to be original. It's a system that gives so much unpredictability, a nice flow to the action, interesting decisions that constantly present themselves, and it's perfect for somebody who plays games solitaire like I do. In the dark slash deadly system, on top of that, the cheat pool mechanic adds all of the chrome, all of the different elements, all the momentum or the phases where the action slows down. So again, I do not have to remember beforehand who activates when. The cheats do that for me, and it's almost magically the initial push of the Germans starts slowing down, the initial inertia of the Allies turns around, etc., etc., etc. All hardwired and beautifully programmed in the chits. Plus other things such as, of course, reinforcements. I like the unpredictability or the added element of fog of war given by 2 waves of reinforcement, because then I know even less of when I'm gonna get everybody in. The Germans also, their supply check is random, meaning it's determined by pulling action chits, which may tempt the German player to perform some daring advances, to be temporal supply. Ultimately, if I am technically out of supply, but I can destroy enough enemies to rebuild my lines of supply before a certain chit is drawn, that of course is good for me. So there are all of the interesting elements, but ultimately to me, the action chit system brings a lot of variety in a very manageable, in a very elegant way. So the Deadly Woods combines all of these things that I personally really like. A topic which is of historical interest, a script that has a certain tragedy, a certain grandeur to it, and works particularly well when you're controlling both sides, so you don't have to sit there and do not much as the ally player. It is a manageable package that you can, with a battle that you can play in a single evening. So I enjoyed pretty much every other game that I played in the dark slash deadly system, and I definitely enjoyed this other installment, this other embodiment of those same ideas. You find, if you like those games, you find those same ideas here in a package. It's very manageable, very playable, and very enjoyable. Definitely, I like this game.